Welcome to our 5,650th meeting, hereby opened. The reason that I mentioned Ted specifically is because he got the thought of the day, so if he wants to regain his status at the club, it better be good. So come on up here and impress us, please.
Thank you, President Timo. Good afternoon, everyone, on this beautiful day. And I actually remembered that I think the last time I gave thought for the day was in November, and it happened to be the big election day. So here we are again, at least in Chicago. So reminder again to vote. My thought for the day is forgiveness. And I will relate a story. The story took place probably about 35 years ago, but it really haunts me to this day. I can't remember all the details, and I'm not sure I even remember the name of the central character, but let's call him Abe. Abe was a retired tailor. I was told he had worked for years at Marshall Fields, and some of you older members might remember that store. It was a great store. And that would have been, this would have been in the late 80s. He worked from his home in Des Plaines because he was retired. And being an attorney, I was wearing suits every day, and for some reason, a lot of them shrank. So being 40-ish, I figured I might need some alterations, and a secretary at the firm referred me to Abe and highly recommended him. So I went to his home. I met him and his wife. They appeared to be well into their 70s, very kind and gracious. I assumed Abe was Jewish, and the second time I was there, the significance of that struck me hard. I noticed a tattoo on his arm with a number. So it was clear that he was a Holocaust survivor. The next time I saw him, I asked if he was willing to share his story. So he did. As you might expect, much of it was heartbreaking. He told of how the Nazis had executed his wife and his daughter, but his son was still alive. One day, one of the SS guards walked in, we'll call him Horst, and knowing of Abe's skills, he asked him to do some work on his uniform. Abe told Horst he would like to be his personal tailor, and that with Abe's skill, Horst would look better than all the other guards, perhaps even meriting a promotion. But Abe wondered if he might ask a favor in return. He related that his son was his only family member still alive in the camp, and he wondered if the guard might consider saving him in return for Abe's dedicated skills as his personal tailor. Taken aback, the guard said he would talk to him later. After a day or two, Horst returned with another garment and told Abe he would do what he could to save his son. Sometime later, perhaps a couple weeks or a month, the camp was liberated by the French. Abe was walking free. He found his son, who was malnourished but still able to walk. As the SS troops were marching by, Abe looked for Horst and he spotted him. He nodded towards Horst, and who was now marching towards his own death. But as he did so, one of the French soldiers came up to him, handed his pistol to Abe and said, "Here, go ahead, shoot him right now, it won't matter." Abe paused just a second, turned towards the Frenchman and said, "No." The latter, puzzled, asked why. Abe said, "Because if I kill him, I'll become a murderer just like him." I was overwhelmed by that, but also so impressed with his forgiveness and refusal to kill another human being, evil as he was. He treasured the sliver of kindness in this otherwise evil man. Abe remarried. His wife was also a survivor, I believe, in another camp. He and she later welcomed a daughter and settled in Des Plaines. I did not have occasion to meet either of his children, but I felt comfortable that they were the offspring of a man whose forgiveness elevated him above the evil of a Nazi guard. I hope we can all remember this example of the power of forgiveness. Thank you.
Well, Ted, you sprung this one on me. Obviously, some of us in the room have a little bit of history here, so it's a little tough to deal with that, but I think the message you delivered is very powerful, and I thank you for that. Obviously, the same holds true today when we look in what's happening in Ukraine. So let's be mindful of that. And I appreciate, Ted, that you approached this topic this way. Nisa, if you want to join me up here real quick, we're moving on to our guest speaker. As always, we'll get to the questions on Zoom for sure, promise. Honor the speaker's time, one question per person. I'll enforce that. And with that, Nisa, if you want to please introduce our speaker. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Timo. I'm really excited to introduce our speaker today, who's a friend and also a Chicagoan who moved to the West Coast. So she couldn't be here in person, but I have her bio here, which will be a really great talk. Lisa Rich is a successful serial entrepreneur, investor, strategist, and communicator and thought leader dedicated to advancing the $1 trillion space economy. She's a founder and chief operating officer of Xplore, a transformative data company using the X-Craft, a powerful multi-sensor satellite designed to collect valuable insights from space. Ms. Rich is also the founder and managing partner of Hemisphere Ventures, a top venture capital firm in the space sector that has invested in over 30 outstanding commercial space companies, including Axiom Space, Umbra, and Link. She frequently presents at space and technology conferences, engages Fortune 500 companies in think tank conversations on space strategy and the landscape for space investment with institutional investors and wealth management firms. Ms. Rich was nominated to the National Space Council User Advisory Group, led by Vice President Kamala Harris, and was listed as the top 12 connectivity execs to watch in 2022. Her media appearances include Bloomberg and CNBC. Her passion and dedication to the space industry is evidenced by relationships she's built with members of the House and Senate, U.S. Commerce Department, U.S. State Department, U.S. Space Force, and customers at NASA, NOAA, U.S. Air Force, DARPA, and DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit. So without further ado, I welcome Lisa. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Nagabati. It is such a pleasure to be here today. And I'd like to just say thank you as well to the distinguished members of Rotary Club of Chicago for having me, and those that are joining us from the space sector, investors, educators, anyone interested in the public at large. It is my goal as a person that believes in your mission of service to educate the public about the space sector. And I'd like to open my chat today with kind of a humorous note. A family member, I mentioned I was speaking today, and they said, "Are you coming to Chicago for this?" And I said, sadly I can't, and I'm sorry I'm not there in the beautiful Union League Club venue. But my family member texted me and said, "I don't know what the space sector is." And I thought to myself, wow, well, there's my purpose right away, is to explain how it is that we might learn more about space, because as we look up at our blue sky, we're seeing planes and we're seeing drones maybe on occasion, we see birds, but beyond that blue sky is a blackness, the blackness of space. And there's all sorts of activity happening up there that we just can't see, touch, taste, or feel. And yet, I have to pose a question. How many of you believe, and I'm going to ask you to raise your hands, that your life intersects with space on a daily basis? I'd love for all of you to think about that. Raise your hands. How many of you believe your life intersects with space on a daily basis? And I'm guessing, I can't see everyone here, but if you look around, not many of you might have raised your hands. So I'm here to change that point of view and explain to you how you do intersect with space and why it's important. So the space industry, you maybe know, since 1969, we launched a man on the moon. We have been trying to get back to the moon for 50 plus years, and we're going to do it. That's human spaceflight, and that's important. But that isn't a part of our daily lives. We have seen launches, Richard Branson launching a private mission to space. We have seen Blue Origin with Jeff Bezos launching, Elon Musk's missions with SpaceX, sending astronauts to space. And I know some of those astronauts, and it's changed their lives to have a view of the Earth from space. The reason they were able to do that is the advent of commercial spaceflight. So we had NASA sending astronauts to space. They're doing scientific research. They're learning all about the science that we can achieve, different things we can achieve using microgravity, which is when you're floating in space, it's called microgravity. But how does this become a business? You know, how is there a business around space? Sending people to space, that's one way. But I'm more concerned with what we can do when we send robots to space. And in terms of your interactivity with space, there are robots doing work for you right this very moment. So I'm wondering how many of you have used Uber? Pretty much everyone in the room has used a rideshare app. Uber arguably is a space company. Why is that? When you go on your phone and you see that blue dot of the car arriving, or you're using Google Maps and you're trying to say, where am I and where is the car? That blue dot is not a cell phone tower telling you where the car is. That blue dot is a geospatial satellite tracking your location. So good thing to remember, we talk about GPS. Oh, I don't have GPS in my car or navigation. Where does that navigation come from? GPS stands for Global Positioning Satellite. So no GPS, no Uber. How many of you have ordered a pizza on your phone and watched the driver coming to you? That is using a satellite. I just, before this chat today, got on my phone to a favorite app that I have, and I encourage all of you to download it. It's called Satellite Pointer. It's completely free. You basically take the phone, you point it up in the air at the sky, and it tells you and shows you all the satellites that are appearing above our heads at this moment. All the satellites that are flying above your head. Right now I'm seeing AMC, I'm seeing Sky Mexico, Intelsat. They're flying above our heads right now. In addition to having astronauts above our heads right now, 264 miles above us is the International Space Station. And at any given point in time, we have 6 to 9 people, astronauts, on the space station, which is quite exciting. So my interest in space is in the robots, as I mentioned. And I'm coming to you today from my own, very proud of it, satellite manufacturing facility here in Redmond, Washington. And as Dr. Nagabati pointed out, I'm all the way on the West Coast. I'm near Seattle. Redmond, Washington is near Seattle. And one thing I don't think anyone in the room would have known before this talk is that more satellites in the world are produced in Redmond, Washington. The most satellites than anywhere in the world are produced here in Redmond, Washington. And why is that we are the capital of satellites in the entire world? Well, we have our neighbors. It's not just my little startup Xplore, and we're growing, we're bigger than that, but our neighbors include giants in the space industry, including SpaceX, including Amazon Project Kuiper, including Microsoft Azure Orbital. And I'm very proud to say as well that my company Xplore is partnered with those very giants, Amazon and Microsoft Azure. And separately, we are thankful that SpaceX is so successful in its reliability and resiliency and ability to send rockets continuously to space, because we are building a satellite that is going to launch on a SpaceX rocket this year. So I'm here at a 22,000 square foot state-of-the-art satellite manufacturing facility. And what does that mean when you assemble a satellite? What do you need to assemble a satellite? Well, you need clean rooms, electronic fabrication rooms. We have a 30-foot high bay. We have mission operations. We have conference rooms, and we have a team of engineers dedicated to assembling a high-performance satellite that's going to go to space this year. But why do we go to space? What is the point? Our company, Xplore, was created to fulfill a mission for the industry in not just thought leadership, but action. And our action is to create space as a service. Maybe you remember back in the internet days when you had to go and buy a wire to figure out this thing called a modem, and how in the world were you going to get on this thing called the World Wide Web, and there was hardware involved and all this complexity, and then you finally connected the cable after that miserable noise was on your computer, and you got on this thing called the World Wide Web. Well, space today, if you want to have a mission to space, and we'll talk about the value of it in a bit, if you want to have a mission to space, you have to be buying a launch, you have to be buying components, you have to be building a satellite, you have to decide what to put on that satellite, how is that satellite going to make you money, have a whole team involved in the whole procurement process and assembly process. And then once it flies, who's going to operate it? And then how are you going to bring your data back? Sounds a little complex, doesn't it? Sounds a little crazy. Who would go through all that rigmarole to have a satellite go to space just to bring data back? Well, at its very inception, Xplore said, that doesn't make any sense. Space needs to be a service where we create the satellite, we launch it to space for a customer, and we bring their data back. How seamless could that be? The data that we bring back from space is really important, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But we thought about this in a way of the insights that we bring back from space can be life-altering and life-changing for people here on Earth. Let's talk about a few ways that it could do that. We have instruments on our satellite that include optical instruments, which is video, which is the ability to have weather data, in some cases weather data, or we have data on the soil moisture, on agriculture and lands and farmlands. We can have information that affects our knowledge of the environment and climate change. And more companies need to know where they stand, where their methane footprint is, where their usage of land is. And even companies want to know, how are they using their workforce? We can have heat signatures and understand how a labor force is operating on the Earth by having heat signatures. So there are different types of characterizations of data that we can bring back from the instruments that we will fly on our satellite that have high levels of importance to different members of different industries. So if you can imagine, if you're an insurance company, for example, and there's been drought, and you have a company filing and saying, all of my acres of land have been damaged, and I want to file a claim for 43 acres of land. Well, how are you going to measure that land unless you have a drone, a human being, somebody with binoculars, I don't know what, actually managing the damage that occurred to that land? Well, with our satellite, we're flying over the Earth just with a single satellite twice a day and viewing all of the Earth and capturing imagery from all of the Earth in a single day. So we could go over that land that's been damaged, the orange groves, what have you, and we can measure specifically how much of that land has been affected by drought, how much of that land has been fertilized to an extent where there's damage, and what exactly caused the damage. Or we can go over an area and understand what's coming in terms of flooding, in terms of hurricanes, disasters. All of this can be alarm bells for disaster recovery efforts where we can save human lives with the data we bring back from space. In our case, we really have a commercial mindset. Certainly the government has invested tremendously in getting information to keep the public safe, as in those examples I mentioned, like disaster recovery. But from a commercial perspective, we want to get data from space that is going to be meaningful from companies all across the globe that might be interested in, let's say, media. If you can have fabulous media that you bring back, imagery that no one else can have because it came from a satellite, what is that worth? What is the value of capturing imagery from anywhere on the globe at any point in time and having that snippet on the news? So when the Queen died and her procession lasted for a week, What if we had had our satellite in space at that time and we could have captured that imagery and the entire world could have seen how we honored the Queen, how the Queen was honored during that funeral procession. These little snippets have great value. If you went to the movies right now, 99% of what you're going to see on a space show or a space movie is CGI. I've talked to producers about this and I've said, do you really want the CGI or do you want actual imagery from space? A perspective that is 100% real. And some of them say, wow, I could have something that looks like this. This image behind me is a solar event. You are looking at the sun. This is not just some art piece. This is an actual image of the sun during a solar event. It's quite exciting. It's quite beautiful. And I think the world would appreciate seeing more imagery like this. So commercial applications are enormous beyond insurance, beyond media, beyond agriculture. There are so many ways that our different partners want to use the data that Xplore is going to bring back on its very first missions to space. So how do we let you know more about your role in this industry and how you can support the space industry? I think all of us have to be spokespeople and educators, learners, and share what we know, because one of the things that I do quite often is I speak to Fortune 500 companies with the topic, what is your space strategy? And I'm going to say it again, what is your space strategy? Many of you might go back 30 years ago when the question was being asked, what is your internet strategy? I was at the dawn of the internet building websites for companies, and many of those companies said, why would I want this thing called the internet? Why would I care? Well, the internet went from a $5 billion industry of advertising to a $50 billion industry to a $500 billion industry today. Why should you care about space? Because space is Internet 2.0. We are taking computers to space. We are getting information from space, not just imagery, but now that when we take a computer to space, we can process in space and send the insights back down to Earth. So a lot of companies right now say very basic information would be helpful to them with their supply chain, for example. They want to know how many cars are in the parking lot. They want to know how many ships are in my shipyard. Well, if you get information from a satellite overhead, you can count those things, but it's very expensive because images come back to Earth and somebody has to have an algorithm to process those images. It's all very complicated. What if we simplify it? What if we send those algorithms to space? We have a processor in space and we bring those algorithms and information back down to us. This is early days, folks. This is space becoming the internet going to space. And I think it's a very exciting time in our human history. And I would love for all of you to become learners of our ways that we use the space industry. And I hope that with some of the points I've shared today, that all of you can become a part of it. And I think as I close, I'd like to have everyone raise their hands again. And maybe I'm wondering if I made my point, how many of you believe that your life intersects with space right now? I hope that all of you are raising your hands and that you've all enjoyed this talk today and that you all agree space is important and should be a part, and is a part already, of your everyday lives. Thank you so much.
Well, at least I can confirm every single hand went up except for those who are eating. So yes, your message has been received. Thank you for being with us. That was very interesting. This is a very curious crowd. I have questions, but I know my fellow Rotarians have questions. So why don't we start here in the room before we ask people on Zoom? Who's got a question here in the room? Mr. Marshall Schmidt, a very reliable partner in this.
So Lisa, obviously the topic of women in STEM is a big topic these days, and as a leader in this industry, could you just share with us a little bit about your journey into the space industry?
Thank you for the question, William. I appreciate it. I have been an anomaly in the space industry. There are not many women. We want more women joining the space sector. And I think part of my history is that I was always an independent person that sought my next big adventure. And I think all women should be looking for their next big adventure and not seeing it as having bounds, but instead of seeing it as being boundless. I've always done what I found I was passionate about, what I wanted to pursue. And that's something I'd love to inspire other women to do. I've been in an industry, financial industry, as an investor of over 30 commercial space companies. It's sad to say that there's maybe 1% of the women in the investor sector are women, and we want to see more women joining. For me personally, I didn't have brothers, and I think of all the wonderful men that I get to work with as my brothers, my uncles, my grandpa I never had, and I enjoy the working relationships that I have. So I hope that I'm a voice of encouragement for women all around. Thank you so much.
Oh, you'll have to unmute the mic again. We could not hear the audience question.
Right here? Is it better? Okay.
Yep, thank you.
No problem. My pleasure. Hi, I'm Chuck, and I have a question. In your bio that we've read, it mentioned that you work with the Air Force, and what government applications do you have in relation to your company?
Right. Well, so a lot of these companies have to work with government, or they choose to work with government because of contracting opportunities. And in our case, we have had $4 million in revenue from contracts that we have won with NASA, NOAA, the Air Force, DARPA, and DIU. So these contracts are for work that we do in specific. I can share because it's all public. We have built plans for weather satellites in deeper space to get closer to the sun, to have more predictive weather capabilities. And we've done that with our NOAA, which is our National Oceanic and Oceanographic Administration. For the Air Force, we have actually been working on our missions beyond Earth because our satellite is capable of going to the Earth, Moon, Mars, and beyond. And so there's a big interest in going to cislunar space, which is that area between the Earth and the Moon. And we will be looking at activities taking place in cislunar space, the ability to observe what's happening in our space domain. It's called space domain awareness, if you want to look up a new term and learn about what our U.S. Air Force is focused on right now. It's space domain awareness. Thank you.
Thanks. I just had a question about space waste. You know, it's become quite an issue along with other environmental concerns, and just want to know what the current status was in terms of how much space waste there is out there, and what is currently being employed in terms of, we'll say, the full life cycle of satellites and eliminating that waste, essentially.
Right. Well, there's a lot to be said about this term orbital debris. That's the space term for it. And most of our satellites that are in the space today have an end of life. And when they deorbit, they disappear and they're burned up in the atmosphere. And so they're not creating a problem for space waste, or as you call it. But one thing to think about is that you can all look at the objects that are in orbiting the Earth that are orbital debris, and you could be really worried because you're looking at a two-dimensional view of it instead of understanding the distance between the objects and how how much space there is in space. So actually, the problem is not that complex for those of us that have satellites, because as I said, most of that debris deteriorates, but also where you fly is something that you can navigate your satellite to avoid any debris, to make sure that it's not destroyed in space. That's something that's already highly advanced in terms of alerting an owner of a satellite how to avoid a collision. So there's a lot known about this, and we do have concerns in a strategic way or defense way with debris, in terms of if we had an unpeaceful situation occurring in space. But beyond that, from a day-to-day basis, it's not an everyday concern.
Hand, and likely has a question. Ilana, unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the great talk. I'm personally very curious about this topic, in part because I'm an astrophysicist by profession. And I'm wondering at what points are we with space legislation, both at the national and international level? So, for instance, who decides what orbit can your satellite take?
Who decides what orbit? Okay, well, so this is, yeah, from a legislative standpoint, we have to get very involved in legislation in the space industry, because there are governance rules. And so it really depends. This is a complex question, but it depends on the origin of the company. Where did the satellite launch from? Where is the satellite going to? How is the satellite connecting to a ground station? Where is that ground station based? All of that is an interplay that's very complicated, but as a U.S. company, we have governance rules that we adhere to, and I'm most proud to say, actually, that our company achieved its license with NOAA, our National Oceanic and Administration, to collect data, to have the right to collect data from our satellite. We had to apply for that. We had to go through a whole rigmarole to make sure that we could, once we flew our satellite, have our business case come through to fruition and be able to collect data. So it's a very complex area, and I do encourage you to learn more about it. We followed all the rules, and it's a huge milestone achievement for us to have our NOAA license, and thank you for bringing it up today.
All right, so I've got the final question because I can't shut up. Obviously, the US government must be fascinated with what you're doing. By the same token, they must be scared because the Russians and the Chinese like very much what you're doing. How do you play that balance between getting their support but living with restrictions? Because I think this is part of the next warfare. And while you're doing the right thing, there is potential for really bad doing. How do you deal with that?
Well, what a question.
Just a following question, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's all right. I mean, it's interesting because the Ukraine was mentioned earlier today in your conversation, and we, in the space industry, the imagery that we bring back can be very useful in understanding what's happening, on the ground in areas that are having conflict and war and such. We don't get into really deep discussion about defense issues, but I can say that the United States is well aware of our need for primacy to ensure our way of life. We need to ensure a peaceful domain in space. And so the relationships that we have with Space Force, Air Force, et cetera, there's a Space Force doctrine out there everyone can read to understand where the US stands in terms of our position in the world and our goals in the space sector. So we have capabilities that our government would love to have. Startups are working on innovations that can advance U.S. capabilities because we have adversaries and we're aware of that. So in essence, it's advancing capability to ensure a peaceful domain and ensuring primacy for the U.S. because we all want our way of life to continue. I think that's a very important thing to think about. And one of the things that drives me personally is to make sure that the work that we do is doing good in the world.
Letha, thank you so much. I think she deserves a big round of applause. Thank you for taking the time to join us here today. That was really, really interesting. I normally find a cup here, a coffee cup that I can hand to you, so thank you for your time. My teammates here are messing with me. The cup is not there, Tamara. But it doesn't matter. We'll get you a cup because you've worked hard. You deserve it. Thank you very much for being with us, and we'll make sure you get your coffee cup. All right?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
All right. Moving on. Our guests today. I know we have one guest here in this room. Let's start with international Rotarians in the room. Not sure there are international Rotarians here. All right, international Rotarians online. Radio silence, okay. Visiting US Rotarians. Where are you from? What's your name? Where are you from?
Hey, so my name is Chris Hill, visiting from Lakewood Ranch. Still pay my dues there, but I moved here to work, so
Great, welcome. Anybody else? I'm scanning the room here. I don't think so. Online, visiting Rotarians online. All right. Any other guests? What's that? Say again?
There's a raised hand.
Somebody's raising the hand, so if...
Oh, hi, my name is Harida. Thank you.
And where are you from?
My first meeting.
And where are you from?
I'm in Chicago. I just moved from
Great.
Pakistan.
Welcome. Beautiful. Any other guests? Otherwise, I think Alida, you're up. Pay attention, she'll command your total focus here.
Well, job one is up first, so it's more important. Got to mentor our kids. So our job one program, our applications are open. If you know any high school juniors or seniors or anyone in the school system that you can help pass that information on to, we would love for you to do that. And we are also looking for wonderful employers to be mentors and great employers to our students, as many people have. And if you can't be an employer but would like to sponsor a student to go to a nonprofit, it's usually about $2,400 to sponsor a student to go work at a nonprofit. We will take that. And next, our fundraiser. I'm coming.
Okay.
I'm waiting for the
I
slides.
have an agenda over here.
Yeah. And the slides were not in the same order as the agenda. Thank you. Our birthday and fundraiser, A Taste of Germany. So we can still, I always feel a month either way is okay to celebrate your birthday. That's how I feel. So we're celebrating our birthday on March 23rd, although it was February 23rd, it's okay. So at A Taste of Germany, so please, at Donk House, so please get your tickets early so we can have a great time and be a part of our wonderful event. in our annual campaign. As of right now, we have raised $15,330 for the foundation and $2,640 for the Rotary Foundation. And once again, please, everyone, we'll be sending out some emails. Sorry, Tamara and Christy. Some emails to everyone, reminding everyone to pick their annual donations so that we can continue to do the good work that we do in Chicago and around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, boss. Appreciate it. And Lisa, while you're coming up here, I can use this beautiful opportunity to remind everybody that we've created a special fundraiser. If the group raises $1,000, I'll show up in Lederhosen. Matthias, you didn't quite fetch 1,000. You're only at 500. If we catch $500 for Matthias, he'll show up in Lederhosen as well. With that being said, Lisa.
I want to see that Lederhosen. I don't know about you. Thanks, everybody. And I really appreciate everybody who has submitted an honoree for Chicago Women of the Year. This is going to be our number 10 this coming May 16th, right here at the Union League Club. It's a regular Tuesday lunch. We had extended the honoree deadline to today. So if there is a special person out there that you would like to submit, you still have time. The application is right on our website, or you can ask me or the staff and we'll send it to you. So we have some cool people that have already been submitted, and that's really exciting. So main thing is just plan to be here May 16th, plan to invite people, and it's going to be a special day. Thanks, Timo.
Stay right here, stay right here. Quick reminder, check out the gyrator for upcoming events. And Lisa, would you mind running us through our 4.5 5-way test?
You bet.
Everybody stand, please.
First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? Fifth,
will it be fun? Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate it. Meeting concluded.